Evening. If you'd like to okay, if our guests would like to mute their cameras as well as their microphones, please, that would be helpful. So good evening and welcome to Rugby Borough Council's Planning Committee today, the 24th of February. This is the meeting that has been rearranged from the 3rd of February. And first of all, I would like to apologise to everybody who tried to join us on the 3rd of February and was unable to. You may have realised that we had some serious technical issues that night, and despite IT's best efforts, we couldn't resolve them, and so hence the meeting has been rearranged. My name is Councillor Catherine Lawrence and I am the committee chairman. The meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being attended by members of the committee through Microsoft Teams. With me, I have the support of the following officers: Richard Holt, Head of Planning and Enforcement, Sarah Chapman, our legal advisor, Claire Wallachek and Veronica Beckover from Democratic Services. Our planning officers are Maxine Simmons, Joanne Orton and Lucy Davison. And I'm hoping, yes, and I do have our Head of Growth and Investment, Stephanie Gibray, who's just joined us. Before we begin working through the agenda, I will go through the rules on procedure. As set out in the introduction, this meeting is being web streamed to the public and is being monitored by IT services. If at any point there are any streaming issues, then I will be informed and the meeting will be adjourned until such time that the technological issues can be resolved. If during the course of the meeting any member of the committee is having connection issues, then there will be a short adjournment of up to 5 minutes to determine whether the connection issues can be resolved. If following the adjournment the connection issues cannot be resolved, then providing the meeting remains quorate, it will continue, and it will be deemed that the member with connection issues has left the meeting and will no longer be able to participate. If it is my connection that goes, then the Vice Chair, Councillor Picker, will assume control of the meeting. For all officers and speakers, will you please switch off your microphones and cameras, and I will call you to speak at the appropriate times. For committee members, your microphones and cameras should be switched off unless you are speaking. If you wish to ask a question during the debate, please use the raise hand function and wait for me to ask you to speak. The voting during meetings will be using the raise hand function. Does anybody have any questions before we move to the formal agenda? I will now ask our Democratic Services Officer to confirm the attendees at this meeting. Your name will be called out. Can you please confirm your attendance by saying present?
Thank you, Chair. Moving through the names alphabetically for members of the committee and then the substitutes for this evening. Councillor Kieran Brown.
Present.
Councillor Batlin.
Present.
Councillor Cranham. Councillor Cranham.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Eccleston.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Garcia.
Present.
Councillor Gilias.
Present.
Councillor Ms. Lawrence.
Present.
Councillor Picker.
Present.
Councillor Roodhouse.
Present.
Councillor Sandison.
Present.
Councillor Srivastava.
Present.
And substitutes for this evening, Councillor Ellis.
Present.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Veronica. So we now move on to the formal agenda, and agenda item 1 is to confirm the minutes of the meeting held on the 6th of January 2021. If it's your wish that I confirm those minutes as being a true record of the meeting, will you please raise your hands now? And keep your hands raised until we've got a full house.
That's unanimous, Chair.
Thank you very much. You may lower your hands. Agenda item 2 are apologies. Do we have any apologies from the meeting?
One apology for this evening from Councillor Mrs. Brown, and the Council substitute is Councillor Ellis. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Veronica. Agenda item 3 are our declarations of interest. to receive declarations of A, non-pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. Are there any? Councillor Eccleston?
Yes, a ward councillor for Plot Lane, Stretton.
Thank you very much. Under B, pecuniary interests as defined by the Council's Code of Conduct for councillors. I can see no hands raised. And C, notice under section 106 Local Government Finance Act 1992, non-payment of community charge or council tax. Again, I can see no hands. We now move on to our applications for consideration. And before we start, I just go through the order in which the items will be dealt with and the rules for public speaking, as we have two speakers this evening. The planning officer will speak first and present the application. The representatives for the objectors and the applicants will be invited to speak, and after each speaker, committee members will be asked if they have any points of clarification from those two speakers. Members of the committee will then go into debate on the application, asking relevant questions of the planning officer if necessary. A formal recommendation will be made and voted on. All remaining speakers on the application will then be asked to leave the meeting and can view the rest of the meeting via the live stream on the Council's website. The rules for public speaking are as follows. Speakers, you will have 3 minutes to make your presentations. I will warn you when you have 30 seconds left and will inform you when your time has expired. Your presentation should then be brought to a halt and no extra time is allowed. Speakers, would you please direct your presentations to amplifying the planning matters you've previously put to us for the benefit of the committee. You should restrict your comments to material planning considerations only. Any non-planning issues will be disregarded. Speakers are not allowed to introduce any additional information that hasn't previously been brought to the planning authority's attention. In other words, introduce late items that have not been suitably considered by officers and properly addressed in the officer's report to the planning committee for members' deliberation. No visual aids or handouts may be used by speakers and no questions to officers or members will be allowed. No members of the public are allowed to take part in the debate once their presentation has been given. So we move on to our applications for consideration. And our first application this evening is R20/0285 and concerns vacant scrub land to the south of Plot Lane, the Old Orchard, Plot Lane, Stretton-on-Dunsmore, and the planning officer is Maxine Simmons. Maxine, I'll hand over to you now.
Thank you. Can I just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can.
Okay. This application relates to the Old Orchard, Plot Lane, and is relating to 25 units along with access, landscaping and works. Before I get into the main body of the presentation, I have to report a change of circumstances. We've received an allegation that the newt breeding pond that's referred to in this presentation has been destroyed. That is being investigated as a wildlife crime by the police, but that is a separate process to the consideration of the planning application. So, as you can see, the site has a red line around it, and one thing to note about this is that the access is owned by the parish council. So the ownership boundary is different to the actual red line boundary. If you note the position of the newt breeding pond, known as Pond 1, we will be talking about that as part of the application. This is a picture of the layout of the proposal for 25 units. Here is an aerial photograph of the proposal, and you can see the habitat of Newt Pond 1 to the south of the red line. This is also a picture of the pond. Now, of all the 11 ponds in the immediate vicinity that were surveyed, 4 have confirmed breeding populations of newts, including Pond 1. Pond 1 of all the ponds in the locality has the highest habitat suitability score for newts of all the surveyed ponds. Here is a wide angle panorama of the existing site access, which, as I've said, is owned by the parish council. Now, notices were served on the parish council in line with planning regulations. It should be noted that this doesn't affect landowner permissions. That would be up to the applicant to secure separately, which is a separate process to obtaining planning permission. The thing to note about here is the tree screen to the front, which wraps around the site. Here are the other angles of primary tree groups around Plot Lane. This is one view from the playground and one view looking northwards from the south, both from the adjacent plot. This is the first picture is taken from the access point, and if you imagine the access point in between those two tall trees curving round into the site. The other photo is the typical habitat of the site, which has evolved over time. This is a view looking south. You'll see the very thick tree screen along the boundary looking towards, which obscures heritage assets which are further south than this. This habitat is scrub, broadleaf woodland and brash piles, and that habitat provides shelter, migration routes, foraging and hibernation habitat for newts. Note that a couple of months ago we had another allocation site come forward in Squires Road. This is different habitat to Squires Road because that was a ploughed field. This is a view of the existing extent of trees on the site. Just to give you an idea, it's quite extensive along the front if you include the root protection area and canopy spread. I just wanted to show you on these two the houses, plot 1 and plot 9, that are mentioned in the suggested reason for refusal. They're fairly small properties, and this is a superimposed picture of plot 1 and plot 9 in relation to the trees. So the principle of development of this site, there is no objection in principle. It's an allocated site. The key issues are to do with trees and landscaping and biodiversity and newt habitat. Other issues outlined in the report can be mitigated. Things like housing mix, transport, heritage, open space. There's no impacts there that couldn't be sorted out either by conditions or Section 106 agreements. So the key issues in terms of trees and landscaping, the gateway trees at the front would not survive the combination of the position of the access road on one side and the plot 9 on the other side. And in addition, the occupiers of plots 1 and 9 would suffer from the impact of trees in amenity terms due to their proximity to the tree canopies. In terms of newt habitat, the site has evolved as core newt habitat. Now, some mitigation has been provided on the site along the western and the southern boundaries, but it is insufficient to maintain the local population of newts. Additional land would be needed to actually mitigate the impact. As it stands, additional land has been unable to be obtained, so there is no net gain in biodiversity as a result. Now, as the local planning authority in this situation, you have to assume the role of competent authority as though you were Natural England granting a licence. Part of that process is to look at 3 tests, and in the report it outlines what the tests are. All 3 tests have to be satisfied, and in this case 2 out of the 3 tests are not satisfied. So in the planning balance there are social, economic and other benefits that weigh in favour of the proposal, but the environmental harm that would result of this proposal relates to both tree loss and biodiversity impacts. So as a result, it is recommended for refusal due to impact on trees and newt habitat.
Thank you very much, Maxine. That was a very clear presentation with good photographs and plans, which I think committee really appreciate. So we're now going to move on to our first speaker, who is Councillor Paul Gordon, who is Chair of Stretton-on-Dunsmore Parish Council. Are you with us, Councillor Gordon? You're muted, Councillor Gordon. Okay. In that case, if you can unmute.
I apologise. I clicked on the wrong icon.
All right. If you are ready, you can put your camera on if you prefer. You don't have to.
No, that's fine. That was by an accident.
Right. OK, so I'm timing you. And if you're ready, your 3 minutes begins now.
Thank you. I'm grateful for the opportunity to speak in opposition to this application. I am, as you said, Paul Gordon, Chairman of the Stretton-on-Dunsmore Parish Council, and I've been asked to convey the views of the Council to this meeting. Stretton-on-Dunsmore Parish Council is not opposed to the development of this site in principle, but it does believe that the current application falls short of the reasonable standards to be expected in a number of areas. The site already has the benefit of a release of greenbelt land, without which it could not proceed, but it fails wholly to establish the strong, defensible, new greenbelt boundary that it was tasked to do. Indeed, it proposes to open up the boundary by crossing it tangentially with an access road and encompassing land additional to the original release. The application is not sympathetic to the surrounding area or neighbours, with buildings situated very close to the perimeter and to the adjoining gardens and the hedge along Plot Lane. The orientation of the individual houses leaves much to be desired, with many of them overlooking each other and some facing an established tree screen located just a couple of metres away from front windows and doors. The post-occupation pressure to remove landscaping is inevitable, and the design as proposed is simply not sustainable. Car parking spaces are designated away from the immediate front of properties, and some are marked as shared, both of which may lead to undesirable social behaviour after occupation. No thought at all has been given to the use or charging of electric vehicles. The environmental strategy is poor as well, with wholly inadequate mitigation for the known great crested newt presence, questionable drainage plans, and no thought or mitigation for the effect of the development outside of the site. Additional traffic through the narrow streets of the village, the effect of surface water runoff on the centre of the village, and strategies to integrate the development with the existing community have been given no consideration or planning. We will be reminded, no doubt, that legal ownership of land has no part to play in the planning decisions, but I think it speaks volumes that as one of the owners of the land that this application covers, we are robustly against the plan as it stands. That point goes to delivery. Within the current lifetime of the Parish Council, it will not agree to the shared use of the playground access, and so the application is not deliverable. We ask that the committee reject the application in its current form and request the applicant to come forward with a more sustainable, ultimately deliverable plan based upon consultation, integration and neighbourliness. Thank you.
Thank you. That was excellent timing. Well done, Councillor Gordon. Committee, do you have any questions for Councillor Gordon? If you do, please raise your hands. No, I can see no hands raised. In that case, we move on to our second speaker, Mrs. Anna Brindle from Delta Planning. Mrs. Brindle, are you with us?
Oh, can you hear me?
We can indeed. OK, are you ready to begin?
I am, yes, thank you.
In that case, I'm going to start timing your 3 minutes now.
Good evening. My name's Anna Brindle of Delta Planning, and we are the agents on this application. Throughout the process so far, we have worked closely with your officers to overcome concerns and issues in order to provide the best development solution for this site and the village. We are disappointed that the application is not supported by a recommendation for approval, but we would ask you to note that the principle of development is not in dispute and that there are no technical objections from County Highways, the local flood authority or environmental health. Whilst we respect the right of the Parish Council to object to our scheme, Highways guidance has changed since the site was allocated for housing. Providing a separate access directly adjacent to the Parish Council owned land would conflict with the current highway safety requirements. Our proposal seeks to share the existing access and would represent the safest option for vehicles and pedestrians, and will also bring forward wider benefits for the village, including improved pedestrian connectivity. The land ownership issues raised by the Parish Council fall outside of the planning process, and such matters should not prevent the approval of the proposed development. Our early ecological investigations identified that the application site provides terrestrial habitat for great crested newts. We've worked closely with our consultants to bring forward a scheme which provides extensive areas of landscaping to combine both a buffer zone to the sensitive newt habitat and a robust planted boundary to the green belt. We note the reported changes in circumstance outlined by your officer and would highlight that we or the applicants have had no involvement whatsoever in any actions concerning this third-party land. We understand that these matters are being investigated outside of the planning application process and should have no bearing upon the assessment of this current proposal. As a result of the loss of the terrestrial newt habitat on our site, the only available solution at this time is to provide additional off-site land for newt mitigation purposes. We consider this to be unworkable and would ultimately render the development of this land unviable as it currently stands. We've worked hard to find a solution to this issue, but have unfortunately been unable to resolve this matter at this time. We believe that any future proposals on this land will ultimately meet with similar obstacles. Our scheme will maintain the rural character of the area by accommodating the prominent tree planting along Plot Lane. Although some limited potential impacts to plots 1 and 9 have been noted within your officer's report,
30 seconds.
we believe that suitable compensatory planting could be negotiated. To conclude, we would ask you to have regard to the fact that the proposal complies with national and local policy and has no technical objections aside from the newt issue. We concur with your officer's conclusion that this proposal will bring forward economic investment in the village at a time of economic uncertainty. And we believe that delivery of housing, including affordable homes, which are otherwise difficult to secure in rural locations, will bring significant benefits to the area.
That's your time up.
That's fine, thank you.
Right, apologise for the noise on my phone for that one. Okay, so now we're going to ask whether committee, if you have any questions for the agent, for Mrs. Brindle. Does anybody have any questions for her? No? In that case, we will move into debate. Right, I can see a hand up. Councillor Sanderson.
Thank you, Chair. What springs to mind on this particular application is quart and pint pot. An awful lot is looked to be being squeezed into a relatively small site, and on every turn, the applicant's proposals seem to be in conflict with our environmental responsibilities on the site in terms of the newts, the trees, the impact of the trees on the dwellers on some of the dwellings and those who would occupy them is also a concern. And the other point, obviously, is there's no net environmental gain on the site. So I think we do have to, as the officer suggested, standing for Natural England, and I would move refusal, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Sanderson. Councillor Eccleston.
Yeah, I'm inclined to agree with Councillor Sanderson, actually, and I would second his proposal on this, on the grounds that he's outlined quite clearly and in line with the conclusions reached by the officer in section 24.8 on biodiversity, Chair. Another point, and it's almost a question really, is has the safety of the access to the site been considered when it comes to the fact that it sits right opposite a children's play area?
Thank you very much, Councillor Eccleston. I've now got Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. There's one question I'd like to ask before I proceed. The trees that were there seems to be an awful lot of concern. Are they listed? Have they got TPOs on them?
I can answer that, Councillor, through you, Chair. They are worthy of TPOs, but they are not at the moment subject to a TPOs, no. But they are worthy of it. The tree officer has confirmed that.
Okay,
Right.
Thank you.
Well, as before I come on that with that clarity in mind, there's two elements here. One, the trees, which are kind of, as we've basically already kind of taken one tree on a previous application down because they were too close to buildings, and I'm very kind of concerned that these trees will overshadow and kind of affect the kind of the ability to people to live with a sufficient amount of light near to those trees. So I think there might be a case on the trees. And as far as newts are concerned, as I can see that the newt pond is outside of the site. Secondly, as kind of experience has prevailed, although it's a kind of one of these preserved species, it's an awfully very prevalent species in this country. It's got a problem in Europe, but I think we ought to have a kind of an export basis on moving newts to Europe to solve their problem. But it doesn't matter which site we go to these days, there are great crested newts there. So I'm not that worried about the newts, and they seem to, I've got a prevalence in my mind about putting people's roof over people's heads rather than keeping the odd newt happy. So, but bearing in mind that there's this big problem with the trees, reluctantly I will go along with the officer's recommendation and support it just on the tree element. But as far as the newts are concerned, I'm not bothered.
Thank you, Councillor Butlin. I think as far as newts are concerned, we're constrained by policy. Councillor Ellis, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I am concerned about newts, but I am also concerned about people having homes. I mean, as somebody who obviously favours protecting the environment and obviously adhering to the policies that you refer to, you know, I'm a bit worried that, you know, we're hearing about, you know, endangerment of these newts. How much land does a population of newts actually require? Because obviously what I want to do here is strike a balance between environmental protection and species protection, but also being able to grant employment and also homes for local population. Thank you.
Thank you. Would somebody like to answer Councillor Ellis's question, please?
Through you, Chair. It is that would require a very detailed opinion from an ecologist, I'm afraid, not from a planner. There is a meta population in Stretton-on-Dunsmore. The ecologists have provided advice both from the applicant's own ecologists and from Warwickshire County Council Ecology. They for this scheme on this site both concluded that the mitigation on site was insufficient, and that led them to the conclusion, giving us detailed advice to say compensatory land would be needed. I don't think there is a set square meterage for newt populations. It depends on how many ponds there are in the area, which ones are breeding ponds, what is the spread, and things like that. I can tell you generally from my knowledge of this scheme that south of Plot Lane tends to be more concentrated in newts compared with the north of Plot Lane. So that's as much as I know at the moment.
Right, thank you for that. And finally, Councillor Gillies.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, we've agreed already that this land is allocated for development in principle, but the chairman of the parish council, Mr. Gordon, did raise some very, very salient points, and I'd like to think that those points will be addressed when a forthcoming revised planning application comes forward. And I would also like to think that the applicants will work hand in hand with the community, particularly the parish council, to make sure everybody's happy and things are done in accordance with what the community are after. So by that way, everything will go ahead in good order with people happy. So I'm going to have to actually support on this occasion refusal.
Thank you, Councillor Gillius, and hopefully the points that you've made and that Councillor Gordon's made will be taken into account moving forward. Right, this application has been, refusal has been proposed by Councillor Sanderson, seconded by Councillor Eccleston. All those who are going to support refusal, would you please raise your hands now and keep them raised until we've done a count.
That's 11-4, Chair.
Okay, thank you. Take your hands down. Those against refusal, please raise your hands. None. And those abstaining, please raise your hands. Okay, so that would appear that we lost a vote because there are 12 of us, aren't there?
Chair, I think
Yes.
it might be me because I've had my hand up to speak actually before Councillor Sanderson, and
I didn't register.
It didn't call me, so I'm assuming, and I voted now, but it obviously it's not registered.
So you're voting for refusal?
Yeah.
We'll take that as a verbal vote then, and
I'll have to shout then if I want to speak.
Yeah,
I'll keep pressing it. Maybe it'll unblock itself. I don't know.
Yeah, you have to click on it and then click on the hand.
Well, obviously, I do know that, Catherine.
When it comes below, but sometimes it doesn't. It doesn't actually work as quickly as it should do.
Yeah.
Right,
okay. Thank you.
So if I don't pick you up with the raised hand, can you let me know, please? Right. So that is unanimous refusal for that one. Thank you. And so could I have confirmation that both Councillor Gordon and Mrs Brindle have left the meeting, please?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just dealing with that now. I can confirm they have both left the meeting.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay, and so we now move on to the next application, which is R20/0272, which concerns land northeast of Castle Mound Way, Castle Mound, Rugby, and Joe Alton is our planning officer to present. Joe, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Can you confirm that you can see the presentation all okay?
I can indeed.
Okay, brilliant. Just having a bit of an issue with my own at the moment. Won't be 1 second. Apologies, Chair. Whilst it's sharing, it's not showing it on my screen, so I'm going to stop sharing the screen and see if that helps again. It won't be a moment.
Okay. If you're unable to, then perhaps Richard Holt can actually bring the presentation up and you talk us through the slides that way.
I can indeed, Chair.
Okay. So if you can just be ready, Richard, in case Joanne can't get them up again. Right, I can see the presentation, Joe. But you're muted, by the way.
Thank you, Chair. It looks like I'm going to have to pass the presentations on to Richard. It's not, whilst it's sharing, it's not showing it for me to be able to move through the presentation.
Okay, thank you. If you'd like to take yours down then, and Richard, if you could load the presentation, please.
Okay, I'm just doing it.
Thank you. I can see that. So if Joanne would like to tell us which slide or when she would like us the slides moved on, please.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Apologies for the delay there. So this application is a hybrid planning application for the erection of industrial storage and distribution units for the land to the northeast of Castle Mound Way in Rugby. The outline planning application element of the proposal is for the principle of the development only, with the full planning permission being sought for the infrastructure works, access and site levels to the site. Access to the site will be taken from Castle Mound Way. Thank you, Richard. So in front of you, as members can see, we've got the proposed site layout plan. The main element to the front of the site, the thinnest portion, is the area that full planning permission is being sought for, with the larger substantial part of the site showing the proposed layout of the units, which is currently under outline planning permission. Thank you, Richard. So in front of us, we have some of the site photos for the proposal. We've got access picture looking down towards the site and the hedgerows in front of you. The next one is looking up towards the site, adjacent to where the Continental building is. We also have a view to the site down from the M6, sorry. And then the final photo is looking down to the site towards the hedgerows. So key issues for the development in terms of the principle of the development, the application site is located within the countryside as defined within policy GP2, and only where national policy permits will development be permitted. In this case, the proposal is considered to be in a sustainable location as the site is situated on the edge of Coton Park, which forms part of the Rugby town. Furthermore, the application site is located within the Coton Park East allocation as defined in policy DS3 and DS7 of the local plan. It is therefore considered to be a sustainable location, having appropriate levels of infrastructure and access routes, including public transport. And the proposal is therefore considered to be in accordance with the adopted local plan and also the National Planning Policy Framework. The Coton Park East Master Plan states that the employment allocation should be provided to meet the qualitative demand for smaller units within the borough. As per the table provided within section 1.7 of the committee report, the proposal seeks to meet the specific development needs identified within the borough and the local plan. An appropriately worded condition has been included within the draft decision to ensure the continued compliance with the adopted local plan and Coton Park East SPD. The application is considered to be in accordance with the local plan policy DS3 and DS7. In terms of the outline matters in relation to the application for character and design and impact on residential amenity, these will be addressed at reserved matter stage when the following matters will be considered: the design, scale, massing and landscaping. Moving on to highway safety, a new access is proposed from Castle Mound Way. Both Warwickshire County Council Highways and Highways England have confirmed that they have no objections to the proposals, subject to appropriate conditions. The indicative layout submitted with the application indicates that the proposal complies with the local authority parking requirements, and the application is therefore considered to be in accordance with the adopted local plan and the SPD on planning obligations. In relation to other matters, there are no materially adverse impacts for flood risk and drainage, landscaping, ecology, land contamination, archaeology and air quality. Moving on to the heads of terms for the application, a section 106 is required towards the improvements to the Gibbet Hill roundabout and off-site infrastructure for public transport services. In exceptional circumstances, a negatively worded condition requiring a section 106 agreement can be considered appropriately where there is serious risk that delivery of the development would be compromised. The access to the site is owned separately from the main site to be developed, which is subject to an option agreement entered into many years ago. This agreement will lapse unless planning permission is obtained by the 16th of March. If no planning permission is in existence by that date, then the developer will lose its ability to deliver the site and thereby having a significant impact on the delivery of the employment allocation at Coton Park. Whilst the planning application was submitted to the local authority on the 3rd of April last year, a response was not received from the Highways Authority until November. That response, along with numerous frequent meetings, have highlighted the need for contributions towards off-site highway works. The amounts for these contributions is still unclear and subject to ongoing meetings with officers, the agent for the application and colleagues from Highways England and the Highways Authority. As such, there would be no guarantee that the Section 106 would be finalised to allow planning permission to be issued by the 16th of March. In this instance, given the serious risk to the development, it is considered appropriate for the use of this condition to ensure that the development of an allocated site within the adopted local plan. Moving on to the planning balance, the proposal is an allocated site within the local plan. The scheme would bring a number of benefits being invested into the construction of site, the employment relating to the construction jobs over the build, and the creation of employment opportunities within the borough. Given the current economic and social uncertainty, particularly in relation to jobs and job security, this is of paramount importance. Indeed, access to employment opportunities is a critical component to sustainable development. The net loss in biodiversity would be mitigated against through conditions, as such weight given to the environmental benefits. The proposal would not have an adverse impact on highway safety, and the development complies with the local plan and the NPPF. The application is therefore recommended for approval, subject to conditions and informatives. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Very comprehensive report, and I think you've explained about condition 25, certainly to my satisfaction, hopefully to the rest of committee's satisfaction. Right, so we have some hands going up, and the first hand is Councillor Sanderson, followed by Councillor Butlin.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, it was looking. I've known the site reasonably well. I regularly used to go up to the Waycarver Training Centre on Castle Mount, which I'm sure the Chair may know as equally as well. I am aware that it is quite reasonably accessible to cyclists from Bankton Road up to the site. So is there any, I didn't see anything there on cycle provision or encouraging cycling as a in terms of modal shift.
Thank you. Joanne, would you like to answer that?
Thank you, Chair. As part of the development of Coton Park as a whole, the cycling provision and everything is being looked into further as part of developments through the whole phasing of the site. At this point, the main areas of where that would be improved is to the housing allocations of the sites, with this part, the main bit coming from the existing highways access where all of the current employment opportunities are at the moment.
Yeah. My second point, Chair, was regarding tree planting on the site. Now, when we were looking at the Brighton development, we actually asked for additional tree planting to prevent urban heat sinks where the temperature raises because of a lack of green cover in a locality. For example, they recommend 3 rows of conifer and then deciduous planting to help both screen the sites, reduce pollution emissions, and to reduce dust from lorries going on and off the site. Have you discussed any of this with the applicant?
Through you, Chair, again, the landscaping element would be looked at the reserve matters phase. This part of the application is solely seeking permission for the principle of development of the main employment site and also the access into the site for the highways works as part of the full elements of all landscaping matters will be at the next phase.
Thank you, Councillor Sanderson. Really valid questions there, and I'm sure that the points about trees and tree planting, bearing in mind we've declared a climate emergency in the borough, will be looked at if this application should be approved. Councillor Butlin next, then Councillor Picker, then Councillor Gillius and Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I've got no hesitation in recommending this for approval. When I look at the mix and the size of units that are being proposed for the site, it's just what we need in Warwickshire and also in Rugby. I was subject to a presentation today which showed we are running out of sites at a very kind of fast rate in terms of employment land, especially in this sort of size of unit. So I am more than pleased to see this application before us today, and I would have no hesitation moving for approval.
Thank you. Councillor Picker.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Jan, for the presentation. It was suitably detailed and I think covered all the major points. Obviously, as Councillor Sanderson's alluded to, it would be nice to have a little more detail at this point about what's planned, both in regards to landscaping, and although I do note condition 26 regarding the BREEAM standards, it would be nice to have a little more detail on exactly what's planned to accord with that. But obviously we are just looking at the principle of development on this occasion, and the principle of development is to me entirely sound, so I will second Councillor Butlin.
Thank you very much, Councillor Picker. Councillor Gillius, you're next.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yes, I definitely agree with the principle of development. Something that's hot on my agenda at the moment, and certainly on some of the parishes to the north of Rugby, are the rat running traffic because of the congestion on the A426. This particular development will have a major bearing on HGV movements northwards up the M1 and HGV movements southward on the M1 back into Rugby. Now, the bugbear we have got a problem with is, in fact, the island at Gibbet Hill. Now, I know it's been mentioned in the presentation and it gets occasionally mentioned at the A5 partnership group, but we've got to do some thinking on this because Magna Park South was just had its just about having all of its units, the 1.4 million square feet, about to be occupied, and they were meant to be putting in mitigation measures to deal with the Gibbet Hill roundabout. But because there's such a lot of other development going on, all going to be putting a lot of extra pressure on the single carriageway A426 from the M6 up to the A5, we're going to see a considerable amount of traffic, particularly workers' traffic, going and rat running through our villages to the north of Newbold. Now, I'd like to see some real thought and consideration on what's going to be done about that, because we don't really want a quick fix. What we want is something that will take us straight through the 21st century. So we've got to be thinking a little bit outside the box so that we can have all measures in place, because by the time we've built out Southwest Rugby, remember all the HGV will be going down the single carriageway on the Western Relief Road, and before we know where the traffic will stop moving through Rugby. We have got to get the artery, the main artery into Rugby is the A426, and that has got to have traffic running very freely through it. Otherwise, people will go and take their businesses elsewhere. So what I'm asking for is those that are in control of making the decisions, please bear all this in mind.
Thank you, Councillor Gillius. Joanne, if you are going to be taking this application forward, I hope you've taken note of Councillor Gillius's point about the transport links and the transport through the villages, and that you can raise this and deal with it appropriately with the relevant authorities. Can I have that reassurance, please?
Yes, that's no problem, Chair. It's I'm still part of ongoing meetings moving forward in terms of contributions and everything for the site, so that's something that can be raised then.
Thank you. And I'm sure Councillor Gillies, you'll continue to raise it at your meetings that you go to regarding the A5 corridor.
I will indeed.
Right, Councillor, Richard, do you want to interrupt at this point?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I was just going to say, I'm sure Councillor Gillies is aware, but just in case people aren't, that Warwickshire County Council are currently consulting on their local transport plan. So it might be worth, again, talking about bigger picture things, members being familiar with that and may want to raise comments directly to Warwickshire County Council as well outside the planning process.
Thank you. So, Councillor Gillies, if you'd like to respond to that consultation and encourage your parish councils to do likewise, that would be something that might actually have an impact on the traffic. Right, Councillor Ellis, at last, we get to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm no problem with the principle of development at all. And actually, I'm quite grateful to Councillor Gillies for raising the point regarding access points, especially through the villages, because currently we have some significant problems with the M1, junction M1, forcing traffic through Newbold. It impacts on the A426 because obviously they're trying to get up to these estates. So I am grateful for him for raising that issue. But my actual point that I want to talk about is access onto this Castlemound Way. Is it coming off the established routes, or is there going to be a new access point? And how do we mitigate any further impact? Because obviously we acknowledge this is an industrial zone, but how do we mitigate any further impact upon the residential communities just slightly to the south? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Really valid questions there. Joanne, can you answer those at the moment?
Yes, through you, Chair. In terms of the access point into the site is solely being taken through the established industrial part of Coton Park as exists at the moment, and there's going to be no links to the new development in terms of access for any HGVs or development traffic that will be going through the site as part of the next phases that come forward as part of the development. The only way in and out will be as existing, and that part of the impact surrounding Coton Park and the works that are going to be taken in towards improving it is all something that was part of the contribution discussions that are going forward with Highways England and the County Council at the moment.
Thank you very much. Okay, hope that reassures you, Councillor Ellis. Councillor Garcia, did you wish to say anything? Because your hand hasn't been raised if you did. No.
Sorry, I can't even get my mic on now. Well, only to absolutely agree with Councillor Gillies, but also, I'm sorry, I'm not terribly clear about the 106. Did that mean that they didn't have to pay the 106, or did that mean that the 106 will be sorted out at a later date? I wasn't very clear on that.
Okay, Sarah?
Thank you.
Can you answer?
Yes, so I can advise is the way it would work. In order for them to draw down the option in sufficient time, they need the planning decision to be issued. Now, as you're probably well aware, usually we do a resolution to grant and don't issue the planning decision until the Section 106 has been agreed. This time we're going to do it the opposite way around. So we'll issue the decision notice, they've secured the planning permission, but on that planning decision notice there'll be a condition saying they can't do anything in relation to the development until the Section 106 agreement has been entered into. So although the documents will be done in a reverse order, they still won't be able to start development until they've got the Section 106 entered into that we're happy with to secure all the obligations and contributions we would normally look for.
Okay.
Oh, so would we be able to say that we would like the Gibbet Island to be looked at as part of the 106 contributions?
That would be something for Joe to pick up as to whether that's a highways mitigation point.
Later date. Okay, that's brilliant then, thank you.
Okay.
And just in case my hand doesn't work, I will be supporting this application.
Thank you. Right, I've got some hands. Oh gosh, I've got loads of hands suddenly gone up. Councillor Ellis, is that an old hand or is that a new hand?
It's a new hand, I'm afraid. Apologies for that. I just want to clear up something regarding the 106 money, or contributions rather. What can I have some clarification on what the connection is to the immediate local community and the allocation of 106 monies? So, for example, and I'm just using this as an example, there are things like community resources. I'll just say, I don't know, a community centre, for example, or whatever. Does a 106 does the 106 development allocation go to immediate, or is it across the whole of Rugby? That's what I'm confused over.
Joanne, do you want, Sarah, you going to answer that one?
Yeah, I can start off and then Jo can pick up on the detail. So it really depends on the nature of the development, the impact it'll have on the local community and the consultation responses. So for instance, highways contributions can offer cover a much wider area than the immediate vicinity, but things like community centres, if they're felt to be needed, will be much more localised. So it really varies on a case-by-case basis, and that's part of the consultation process, is that we will go out to the statutory consultees who are experts in that area, including our own officer departments, and ask them what the impact is and how we mitigate it, and therefore where that mitigation needs to be located.
Thank you. And I think I'm correct in saying that we also look at Section 106 and we look at things like education and health, don't we? There's a whole range of areas that are looked at when the Section 106 agreement is worked out.
Fantastic. OK, thank you very much.
Right. Councillor Picker, you're next.
Yeah, it was just digging back into this. It looks to me, and I'm hoping that either Sarah or Jo will correct me if I'm wrong here, but it looks to me like Condition 5 does set out the areas that we're going to be looking Section 106 money, and it does include Gibbet Island and, as Councillor Sanderson alluded to, the need for additional off-site cycle infrastructure. So that formed part of my basis of moving approval.
OK, right. So, Councillor Ellis, if you've got the documents, I suggest that you do look in detail at Condition 5.
Yes,
right.
Sorry, I was subbing and I got asked quite late. I apologise.
So well done to Councillor Picker for pointing you in the right direction on that one. Councillor Gillius.
Yeah, yes, Chair. Just to affirm that I do attend Magna Park liaison meetings. And of course, their mitigation measures was to do some work to the Gibbet Hill roundabout. But they are absolutely of the understanding that with all the developments going on in the area, we've all got to work together, not just to do a little quick fix on the Gibbet Hill, but do a proper job on the Gibbet Hill and the A426 back to the M6. So this is really one that we've got to get our heads round, so we're thinking all together rather than individuals.
Thank you. I think that's possibly something that our head of growth and of investment can pick up going forward in the meetings that she has with the various agencies and the wider impact of these applications. I don't know whether Steph wants to come in on that one.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Happy to do that.
Thank you. Right. And we've got Councillor Srivastavi with a hand up. Ramesh?
Thank you very much, Chair. What I said, County Gillies has raised a lot of transport questions. Will there be local people, local community consultation on this process, which is, as you highlighted, very important to get things right?
I think, Councillor Srivastava, you've already heard that Warwickshire County Council already have a consultation out on transport, and that should be the place where concerns and comments are addressed. Am I correct?
Okay.
No, nobody's disagreeing with me on that one.
I don't know. Traffic is a great issue, and we want to establish, as County Gillies has said, the local community is a partnership working, and we get the right solution, and that's very important.
Yeah. So can either Richard, Jo, or Steph confirm that that will be looked at by Warwickshire, or are we part of that consultation? Richard?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, there's the local transport plan is currently out to consultation at Warwickshire until the 18th of March, and that is their transport plan. And apparently they say that will set out the transport needs, the challenges and the priorities and objectives of the county as a whole. So obviously Rugby is part of that, and they feel that will then shape future transport schemes and developments within the county, and also provide people access to facilities and where they need to go about their daily lives. So I've not looked at that document in detail, but obviously I'm aware that councillors as a whole probably may want to have a look at that document. They may have been contacted by county council representatives and the Highway Authority to respond to that. So obviously through Steph and her channels, and she will obviously be raising it with her counterparts at the county as well. But there is and I can say that when the Highway Authority does look at individual applications, they aren't looking at them in isolation. They are well aware of other cumulative impact and other schemes in the area. But this also crosses over to the Highways England as well, because the A5 is obviously a trunk road.
Thank you. Steph, do you want to come in on this one?
Thank you.
Oh, thanks for that, Richard. That was really helpful. And just to add that we will be formulating a corporate response to the first stage of the local transport plan. So we'll happily pick up those comments in that corporate response.
Thank you. That was what I was going to ask for, a reassurance that there will be a response from Rugby Borough Council, bearing in mind all the points that we've been raising about transport with applications. Right, I think we've had enough of a lengthy debate on this. Approval's been proposed by Councillor Butlin, seconded by Councillor Picker. All those in favour, please raise your hands now and keep them raised. And do we have an answer, Veronica?
That's 11-4, but Councillor Garcia has not raised her hand, so we'll
She said she was voting for it, so that's 12. That's unanimous. Thank you. Hands down, everybody. Okay, so we move on now to the next application, and again, it's Joanne. And Joanne is going to be presenting R20/0336, which is land off Long Hassocks Rugby, which is erection of up to 225 dwellings. Joanne, are you wishing Richard to put the presentation up?
Yes, please, if that's okay, Chair.
Okay, Richard, can you put the presentation up and then I'll hand over to Joanne, please.
Okay, just bear with me. Okay,
right,
can I just confirm you can see it?
Yes, we can see that. Thank you.
Brilliant. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Richard. Okay, so this application seeks full planning permission for the erection of up to 225 dwellings, including the extension of the existing attenuation pond, along with associated access, open space, landscaping and infrastructure works up at Coton Park East. The access to the site is to be taken from Long Hassocks and Great Burnet's Close. So in front of you now, what members can see is the proposed site layout for the plan. To the left, as you look at the development, is the previously approved 60 dwellings, which was granted in 2018. To the right, we've got the 225 dwellings, which forms part of the allocation, including open space and connection, which allows for the further development of the next phase of the allocation to the north. Okay, so just looking at a few site photos now. We have a view of the site looking across towards the development from 2018, which is nearing completion. We have a view looking up the site towards the hedgerow to the rear of where the development will come to an end. Then we have a photo looking down towards the hedgerow at the southern portion of the site. And also a photo that looks out towards Newton and where the extension to the attenuation pond will be. So key issues for the site: the principle of development. The application site is located within the countryside as defined within policy GP2, and only where national policy permits will development be permitted. In this case, the proposal is considered to be in a sustainable location as the site is situated on the edge of Coton Park, which forms part of the Rugby town. Furthermore, the application site is located within the Coton Park East allocation as defined in policy DS3 and DS7 of the local plan. It is therefore considered to be a sustainable location, having appropriate levels of infrastructure and access routes, including public transport. The application is therefore considered to be in accordance with the local plan and the NPPF. Moving on to the character and design, the proposal has been submitted following the same principles as the planning application which was granted in 2018. This resulted in a scheme which works with varying levels of the site, adding interest to the street scene. The scheme has been designed as a continuation of the existing development completed on Coton Park and to allow for the future allocation proposed through local plan policy DS7. Design features such as gables, bay windows and porches are proposed to add interest to the development. Where properties are in key locations, additional windows and detailing has been incorporated to add interest to dual frontage properties, ensuring the development incorporates a high level of interest and design. Thank you, Richard. So looking at some sections through the site which shows some of the images. The first one runs through the main road, that's the main stretch through Coton Park running through the development, which shows the varying levels and also the differences in design given interest and features such as chimneys. The next view is looking out towards the street scene which will be looking out towards the Balancing Ponds and Newton, which again has different variants in design and also shows the dual frontage properties, including different design features. And again, the section to the southern portion of the site, which shows again different properties which overlook the open space at the bottom and the local equipped area of play. Thank you, Richard. Moving on to highway safety, a new access is proposed from Long Hassocks and Great Burnett Close. Warwickshire County Council and Highways England have confirmed that they have no objections to the proposal, subject to appropriate conditions. The indicative layout submitted with the application indicates that the proposal does comply with the local authority's parking requirements. Moving on to the heads of terms. It is important to note that the table relating to heads of terms in section 10 should be read in conjunction with section 9 relating to planning obligations of the report, which goes into more detail of the required contributions. As the application forms part of a site allocation, all contributions are being calculated proportionally where triggered across the development. Excuse me, sorry, Chair. The local authority will be working with developers when finalising the section 106, so that all contributions being sought are in accordance with the local plan, infrastructure delivery plan and civil regulations. In exceptional circumstances, as previously mentioned in the last application, a negatively worded condition requiring a section 106 agreement can be considered appropriate where there is a serious risk that the delivery of the development would be compromised. The land in question is subject to an option agreement which was entered into many years ago. This agreement will lapse unless planning permission is obtained by the 16th of March. If no planning permission is in existence by that date, then the developer will lose its ability to deliver the site and thereby having a significant impact on the delivery of the new residential allocation at Coton Park East. Whilst a significant amount of work has been put into the application and section 106 agreement to date, given the options expiry and pressing time constraints, there would be no guarantee that the section 106 agreement would be finalised to allow planning permission to be issued on the 16th of March. In this instance, given the serious risks to the development, it is considered appropriate for the use of this condition to ensure the development of an allocated site within the adopted local plan. The next few slides breaks down condition 30, which wasn't available at the time for the agenda to be published online, and this details exactly what we will be seeking in more detail so that when it comes to finalising the heads of terms, we've got a breakdown, and it will clearly be in accordance with the condition. So we have Warwickshire Police, who are looking for a contribution towards recruitment and officer numbers within the vicinity, given the rise in demand in policing. There's also the sustainable urban drainage and play and open space for the provision of on-site open space and obviously maintenance and Great Central Walk and Great Central Way improvements. We have the North Warwickshire Clinical Commissioning Group and Warwickshire County Council Public Health, with monies to go towards Brownsover Medical Centre. There's also the University Hospitals of Coventry and Warwickshire NHS Trust. We have traffic and road safety, libraries, education, seeking for numerous years throughout, and also allows the potential for a new education facilities if required as part of the master plan moving forward. And we've got public transport, which is looking towards bus provision currently in and around the Elliotsfield area up into Coton Park, and ensuring compliance with the affordable housing, that this meets the local plan requirement. Again, we have the ecology condition, which is ensuring that we get the biodiversity offsetting to mitigate against the on-site biodiversity loss, and also Highways England and the Highways County Council Authority, which again are still subject to negotiation as with the employment site. In relation to other matters, there are no materially adverse impacts for residential amenity, flood risk and drainage, landscaping, ecology, land contamination, archaeology and air quality. Moving on to the planning balance, the proposal is an allocated site within the local plan. The scheme would bring a number of benefits, including additional dwellings and affordable housing to local stock and associated short-term economic benefits. The net loss in biodiversity would be mitigated against through conditions as such weight given to the environmental benefits. The proposal would not have an adverse impact on highway safety, and the development complies with local plan and the MPPF. It is therefore recommended that the application is approved subject to conditions and informatives following the completion of a Section 106 agreement later down the line. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Joanne. Particularly appreciate the detail of the section of condition 30 and the section 106 agreement that needs to be entered into. And I was going to ask about the points raised by Newton and Biggin Parish Council and also the points raised by neighbours who had submitted objections. Hopefully most of those have been covered in the report and addressed and also covered in that section 106 agreement. Are there any of those responses, Joanne, that you want to mention before I move on?
Through you, Chair, just to confirm that yes, they have been taken into account through the determination process. In particular, the comments raised from Newton and Biggin Parish Council, they were forwarded on to the Highways Authority, so that they had the request in front of them to make sure it all met everything that they required.
Thank you very much. Right, move on. Councillor Picker, you're first.
Thank you very much, Chair, and thank you, Joanne, for that extremely comprehensive presentation. I think that was probably the most detailed breakdown of Section 106 terms I've ever seen. So thank you for that, as it's actually addressed a lot of the comments that I was thinking of making. Based on that, I just wanted to draw attention to condition 6 regarding parking. Can you just confirm that that does prevent garages from being used for other purposes? It limits them so that we make sure we have the necessary parking on site?
Through you, Chair, yes, I can confirm that is the purpose of the condition, to ensure that we keep compliance with car parking standards.
Perfect. And then we've got the normal condition about biodiversity and tree planting, condition 21. So I have no hesitation in moving this one for approval as set out in the report.
Thank you very much, Councillor Picker. Councillor Butlin, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. When I saw this application before us, the first thing I kind of went to was affordable housing. As everybody remembers, there was a lot of contentious issues about the last application up on Coton, but it just shows an applicant can kind of adhere to the provisions in terms of affordable housing, and therefore they're providing a full amount of affordable housing for this site. So I commend them for that. Not to mention, as Joanne has kind of simply put forward to us, all the other things that have come through our 106 agreement. So again, it shows it can be done and afforded. So I've got, on the basis of that, the affordable housing provision being kind of very, more than adequate, I have no hesitation to second the approval.
Thank you, Councillor Butlin. Councillor Sanderson?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder whether planning and the ecology unit at Warwickshire County Council are up to speed with our recent decision to use housing land to meet biodiversity requirements. This would mean that we won't, as we frequently see, is we will want to see biodiversity gain within a locality, only to see the county council recommending that the money is spent 6, 7, 8 miles up the road. Can we make sure that where we are looking for biodiversity gain, it's within the locality?
Jo, would you like to respond to that, please?
Yes, through you, Chair. And I noted that Sarah had also raised a hand, so I don't know whether Sarah wants to follow on after myself. I can confirm that I had found out that that had happened on one of my previous applications, and it's something that I raised with the ecology department at the time, that we would want to see the biodiversity monies being spent within the locality of the scheme and within our borough before other areas are to be looked at further down the line. Sarah, did you want to add anything?
Thanks, Jo. Through you, Chair. This is something I think that has been come to our attention relatively recently. So thank you to Councillor Sanderson for flagging it again, because it is something we need to keep at the forefront of our minds. We are tightening the wording about Section 106 drafting to try and limit where Warwickshire County Council can spend those monies, and impressing upon them the need to spend them as close to the development as possible. Now, sometimes it depends on what schemes they have in mind and how cost effective it is to spend that money on improvements as to how close it is to the development, but it's something that certainly planning officers are very alive to and are keeping a beady eye on.
Thank you. I suppose it would help if developers could actually look at biodiversity gain and include it within the application, and that would be a win-win situation.
I don't disagree, Chair. I think on-site mitigation is always preferable to a financial contribution where possible.
Okay, so planners, please take note. Councillor Ellis.
Thank you, Chair. I have no issue with the development at all, really. But I think my main observation is something that we're talking about because it links. We were talking about linking developments a second ago in the previous thing. If I'm honest, I'm looking at a map of Google Maps at the moment, and the HGV development is obviously going to impact very much on this development as well. So my point is one of access. So I do think that we need to have, in some way, some review or consideration of an access point. I'll leave it up to the developers to work out what that means. But also the condition of now it looks like Coton Park is very much full. So with this additional 240 odd houses, are we going to see now a commitment then to schooling for these families? So, you know, that future forecasting really, because we're not just building in isolation. And yeah, I mean, it's really good to see that there's facilitation for green spaces as well. Obviously, I welcome all of that. But I mean, my main concern really is just knowing that, you know, for that huge estate, which it is now, including this new development, that, you know, somewhere along the way, we're going to see some facilitation for education And the only other thing I would like to add, just as a polite observation, the existing builders that are there have a tendency to drive onto the bridle paths and disrupt local residents. So can we put some kind of provision in there just to respect the people who already live in those communities? Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Ellis. Good point about education, one that's close to my heart, but I'm sure Joanne can give us some more information about the education provision on Coton Park and the schools that are going to be built in the future to accommodate the families living there. Joanne?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm subject to other meetings moving forward with the site with the education departments at Warwickshire County Council and also the infrastructure team there. And as part of the 106, the contributions also require the provision of monies towards new education facilities, either secondary or primary, depending on what the need is at the time when we look at it as to whether or not existing facilities are extended or if we have new development that comes forward. The master plan, which is allocated for Coton Park within the northern phase up from the Persimmon development, which we're considering tonight, as part of their site plan that they've submitted, it does include areas which have been left out with a view of being reserved for education.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Okay, I think we've had sufficient debate and we've had it moved for approval by Councillor Picker, seconded by Councillor Butlin. All those in favour, please raise your hand and keep them raised until we've done the count. Veronica?
That's 9-4, Chair.
Okay.
Catherine, can I add my penn'orth, please?
Yes. Okay.
My hand won't go up, but as you addressed both of my bugbears, as in the affordable housing and the parking, I'm more than happy to support it.
Okay, so what count have we got now?
That's 11-4, Chair, with Councillor Garcia.
Okay.
Chair?
Yes.
My hand won't go up either, so I'm quite happy to support this.
Right, so that makes it 12 and that makes it unanimous then.
That's correct, Chair.
Okay, thank you very much, everybody. Hands can go down. Right, so that application is approved. Thank you very much, Joanne, for both of your presentations. You've done a lot of work tonight, so time to relax a little bit. Right, and we move on to our final application tonight, which is R20/0366, and this is Lem Valley Golf Centre, Southern Road, Kites, Hardwick, and it is Lucy Davison to present. So Lucy, I'm going to hand over to you if you're ready.
Thank you, Chair. Can I just have confirmation if you can view the application, the presentation?
I can, yes, thank you.
That's great. Okay, this application relates to Lem Valley Golf Centre. The application is a outline planning application, whilst there is the full description there of the development which they hope to move forward with. Specifically this evening we're looking at the principle of development and the means of access. On the first slide here I have the site location plan, which shows the red line boundary for the application with the wider site ownership and then an aerial view of the site. Moving on to some site photographs, this is a photograph of Fishing Lake 2, which would be remodelled as part of the application. The second photograph shows an area of tree planting that would be removed to facilitate the proposed indicative layout of the proposal that has been provided with the application. This shows the access up to the fishing lakes from the clubhouse, and you can see a container in the foreground there. And the second photograph on the screen at this time is that area of treescape from the other side at the driving range that's there at the moment. Second photograph shows again a wider shot of the driving range with sort of the very slim section of the clubhouse shown, and the second photograph shows that access point from the fishing lakes with the existing clubhouse building at the driving range in shot with the parking area. This is the concept master plan that has been provided with the application to give an indicative layout as to how the works at the fishing lake and various proposals may be provided moving forward at reserve matter stage. In regards to the principles of development, the site is located within the countryside, and therefore there are restrictions into the type of development that can be carried out in this area, and it is felt this application complies with those that are included in wider national policy and also local under policy GP2. In regards to the type of development that would be undertaken, this would support the rural economy through tourism and leisure, and therefore complying with policy ED4 of the local plan. The second aspect that is being assessed as part of this application is access to the site. As part of the assessment of the application, junction modelling has been undertaken. Warwickshire County Council Highways have identified that whilst there may be a temporary impact on queuing prior to the provision of Homestead Link, they don't believe that this will be severe to cause an objection to the scheme, and therefore have provided a response of no objection subject to the conditions included in the report. Other matters that have been addressed in the report and the conditions include landscape and ecology, flood risk and drainage, and air quality. Matters that aren't addressed at this stage but would at reserve matter stage include character and design and residential amenity. However, there are conditions included in regards to protection of residential amenity through those provided by Rugby Borough Council Environmental Health Department. Therefore, on that basis, the recommendation is for the application to be approved subject to condition and informatives as it complies with the local plan policies and the NPPF.
Thank you very much, Lucy. Bearing in mind the impact that lockdown has had on the rural economy and also on people's health and mental well-being, I think anything like this is an added bonus to our area and also to our economy. My only concern is about electric charging points, because obviously as we move towards electric charging cars, we do need the points there. I notice we've got that on informative 8, but I would hope that whoever is developing this will take note and make sure that there are some electric charging points, and I'm happy to actually recommend approval from the chair. Right, so next hand up is Councillor Cranham.
Thank you, Chair. I'm happy to second it. The rural economy, it's important, especially in the times that might come in the future. Looks a good development to me. I'm happy to second it.
Thank you. Councillor Sanderson? You're muted, Councillor.
Sorry, Chair, technical glitch.
Don't worry.
Given the extreme conditions we've had to put up with over the last year or so, specifically in the leisure and sports areas, I would suggest that this may be one of a number of applications to diversify sites that we will see going forward in the next year or so.
Thank you. Okay, is anybody else wishing to speak? In that case, it's been proposed by myself from the chair, seconded by Councillor Cranham. All those in favour, please raise their hands.
I'll raise my voice, can I?
Thank you. How are we doing on the hands being raised?
That's 11-4 with Councillor Garcia.
Thank you. Is anybody else having problems raising their hands? No? Okay. Any hands down then? Those against? Do we have anybody voting against? Do we have any abstentions?
None, Chair.
So we lost a vote somewhere. Somebody didn't manage to get their hand up. Not sure who. Okay, in that case, that application is also approved. So I'd like to thank Lucy and Maxine and Joanne for their presentations this evening. That's been very instructive, and such good presentations do make it very easy for committee to understand and to make a decision. So we now move on to agenda item 5, which is advance notice of site visits for planning applications. No advance notice of site visits has been received. Agenda item 6, planning appeals update.
Sorry, Chair, it's Richard speaking.
Yes, Richard.
We have received a request for a virtual site visit from Councillor Howard Roberts in connection with R20/1030. It's an outline application for 40 Class C2 retirement bungalows at Thurleston Meadows Care Home. I think we have had some communication with him to explain that, as per the January minutes of committee, we said that we weren't doing site visits, but we would bring a virtual site visits to members when the application was going to be considered before committee. So as per our previous sort of protocols, obviously we have to first say whether members are happy for us to do that based on Councillor Roberts' request.
Okay. Committee?
Qualify. Can we just clarify? Is Councillor Roberts calling this one in?
I believe it has to come to committee because it's actually a major application because of the size of the site, so it'd have to come to committee anyway.
Well, isn't it always helpful then if we do get a bit of a virtual site visit? It would be brilliant.
Richard?
Yeah, I mean that's the plan. I mean, if members, obviously what we would normally do is if we were having a site visit, members would vote to see whether or not we were happy to have a site visit. Obviously, and I suppose it depends when this application actually comes to committee and what the current state of play is in the country. But at the moment, we would say that yes, we're happy to have a site visit, but based on obviously in a virtual basis, unless the circumstances change. But
yes, yeah, I think you're right, Richard. I think that we go with existing rules, and until we are out of any kind of restrictions and can actually meet as a group out on site, then if committee are happy to go with a site visit, that's probably what we're going to recommend. Councillor Roothouse, would you like to come in on this point?
You put it perfectly, Councillor Lawrence. So I'll keep my hand up to vote in favour of that if you want.
Right, so that's what we're going to vote on. We're going to vote on, under current restrictions, we will ask for a virtual site visit until such time as restrictions are lifted and we can actually go out on site. All those in favour of a virtual site visit, raise your hands.
I am.
Thank you. Who haven't we got? How are we doing?
That's 10-4, 11-4 with Councillor Garcia.
Okay. Is there somebody not able to raise their hand? Anybody against? Hands down then. Anybody against a virtual site visit? Counts. We've got one hand raised.
That's one against, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, so that makes the 12. So there are more in favour of a virtual site visit. Okay, unless of course restrictions are totally lifted and then we will actually go out on site. Okay, that takes us on to agenda item 6, which is planning appeals update. Richard.
Thank you, Chair. Appendix A obviously is planning appeals determined for the period from the 1st of October to the 31st of December 2020, basically just for members to note.
Noted.
Appendix B was the number of appeals outstanding as at the 31st of December. However, I do have some updates, obviously owing to the passage of time. Both Yardley's Meadow, Stretton Road, Woolston, and land adjacent Stretton Wharf, Stretton under Foss have both been dismissed by the Planning Inspectorate on the grounds of impact on the Greenbelt. 1 Caldecott Street has also been dismissed on the grounds of the impact on neighbouring properties. And 231 Rugby Road, Binley Woods, that application has actually been allowed by the inspectorate on the basis that they felt that the development would not have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area. So that's it for that one.
Thank you very much. So agenda item 7, delegated decisions.
Just to note, thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Noted. Right. So that brings to a conclusion our planning committee meeting tonight. I'd like to thank all of the officers, the IT and comms teams and members for their input into tonight's meeting, as well as our speakers. For those of you who've been watching on the live stream, I hope you found that both interesting and informative. And can I remind everybody that the next planning committee meeting will be on the 31st of March. So thank you, everybody, and good night.
Good night.
Night all. Thank you very much.
Good night.